Okay, welcome to today's video where I'm going to be talking about the customer relationships block of the business model canvas. Let's begin. So, as you know, the business model canvas is composed of 9 blocks. And up until now, we've talked about the customer segments. Who are our customers? What do they want? What are they trying to accomplish? What are their problems? Value propositions. What is our product or service doing for our customers? Which of their problems, their pains, does the product solve, and how does it do this? Then we talked about channels, and in the channels we talked about, how do our customers find out about our product? Where do they evaluate the product? Where do they buy the product? How do they receive it? What type of services do they get after sales, and so on? So the touch points between the value proposition and how it gets to the customer segments. And today we're going to connect the value proposition with our customers in a second way. So we're going to talk about customer relationships. And customer relationships is about, are you selling an identical product to all of your customers, in which case you're not really segmenting them? Or are you, in which case you don't really need much information about them? Okay, so you just try to sell the same thing to everyone. On the other hand, if your customers are segmented, if they're significantly different than each other, then it might make more sense to perhaps only focus on some of them, or try to personalize your offering to who they are, what they need, what their problems are, etc. So are you going to personalize? Are you going to customize your product or service to your customers? Obviously, doing this can be quite expensive. In which case, is there a way that you can customize, but do this in a way that does not increase the cost too much? For example, can you automate the process? Can you have a program do this, which would probably bring down the cost of that customization down significantly? Where are you going to find your customers? How are you going to get them to come evaluate and then purchase your product? So what type of an acquisitive relationship are you going to have? And maybe most importantly, once you have your customers, how are you going to retain them? How are you going to keep them so that you can continue to make money from your customers? So all of these are about the customer relationships block of the business model canvas, and some sample companies, which we will go over towards the end of today's presentation, which have done innovations in their customer relationships or have interesting examples of what the customer relationships is about. And we will talk about Lego, we will talk about Nespresso, we will talk about Amazon again, we will talk about Netflix, and we will talk about Gillette later in the presentation. So next, let's talk a little bit about what type of customer relationships you can have, what categories of customer relationships should we consider. So the simplest one might be if there is no personalization. So you basically have a transactional kind of relationship with the customer. You're selling something, they come and you sell it to them. You don't need to gather any information. You don't need to customize for them. It's very straightforward. An example of this might be somebody that is selling simits or gevreks on the street. Okay, so typically they know nothing about you. You simply are walking down the street, you see it, you feel hungry, you want to buy one, you give them money, they give you the gevrek, and you leave. So this might be quite simple relationships, but I actually know of some simit sellers which personalize or have a relationship with their customers. For example, I know of a seller in Izmir, actually in Karşıyaka. What he does is he knows the people along his route. He's one of the mobile sellers. And every morning he'll come and knock on the doors of a number of his customers. He knows who they are. He knows their names. He knows how many they buy typically. He knows when they buy. And by knocking on their doors, he's able to sell to them again and again and again, and probably increases the potential sales, but maybe most importantly, reduces the standard deviation of the sales, because he has certain customers which buy from him every day or maybe once every 2 days. By being able to take advantage of these, he is able to, continue to sell without a lot of variation, a lot of variability in the actual number sold. And he can probably finish his job much quicker as a result of this, and then maybe go buy some more, or maybe go do another job. What else? Well, another way to have customer relationships might be offering personal assistance. Okay, so as a company, you may have people that are serving just one customer or one group of customers. The problem with this is that this can be very expensive. So you want to make sure that the money or the profit that you're making from that customer group is enough to make sure that the cost of offering that personal assistance can be offset, especially if you have dedicated personal assistants. Okay, so personal assistants could simply be a call center, or you have a group of people that when customers walk in, they go and serve them. But with dedicated personal assistants, you have particular people that are always there to help you out. For example, some of the banks do stuff like this. And if you're a customer with high net value, net worth, then they assign people to help you out, and you know their names, you're able to call them and always do business with them. So it's a long-term relationship that develops with them. On the other hand, if you are somebody that doesn't bring much profit to the organization, then they might try to have you do a lot of the work. So, for example, it might be a self-service restaurant. So, where prices are lower, so you have to go and get the dishes, choose them, pay for them, walk back to your table and eat it. And in some places, even take your plates at the end of the meal to get cleaned. Or gas stations. You have full service gas stations in some places where the workers, the employees take care of everything about your car, about putting gasoline, about taking the money and so on. But you also have some places which are totally self-service. You walk in, you pump your own gas, you pay for it with your credit card and so on. So the cost to the organization is usually much lower when they can have you do a lot of the work yourself. Again, banks, depending on your profitability, for some things, they want you to do a lot of the work yourself. If you're a high net worth individual, they might provide you with a dedicated personal assistant. But on the other hand, if you don't have a lot of money in the bank or are not a very profitable customer for them, they kind of push you towards either just using the ATMs rather than using the branches, or even better for them, if they can get you to use their smartphone applications or internet websites to take care of your business, then even at very low profit levels, the marginal cost of providing ATM service, or better yet, internet or smartphone app service, is close to zero. So they can still make a profit from you if they can get you to go out to the other ways of getting the service. Automated services. This is interesting. Sometimes, especially companies that use a lot of technology to keep track of you and know who you are and so on. So we might call this big data, when they have a lot of information about you and their other customers, which might be similar to you. They may be able to suggest things to you. Amazon is a very good example of this. So they sell so many books to so many people, and they know what you've been looking at, what book you're considering purchasing, what you've bought in the past, whether you've liked it or not. And using all of this information, they are able to offer you customized service suggestions, but doing all of this through automation. Okay, so keeping the costs low. And as a result, another big thing that they have is that they offer the books typically at very low prices as well. Communities. So another thing which Amazon does is evaluations of a lot of the books that they sell. So they make suggestions to you, but when you're deciding whether to buy the book or not, typically what a lot of people do is they look at the reviews. Well, why are the people reviewing the books working for Amazon? No, they're part of the community, right? So I buy a book, I read the book, and then I go write a review about it. Or I use a product, I go write a review about it, helping other people decide whether they want to buy this particular product or book or go look for something else. Why am I doing this? Just because I'm a nice person? Maybe a little bit. But a lot of the time, people feel empowered. They feel as if they're doing something valuable by writing those reviews. And actually, through its community, not only does Amazon get me to write those reviews, but it gets other people to evaluate my reviews, deciding how high or how low my reviews appear among the others. So getting communities to do the work, and sometimes, helping you also create material to help those companies can be very successful ways of doing business. And another thing that you might want to consider among your customer relationships is how can I keep the customer for a longer period of time? So one way is to make sure that your customer is very happy. We'll come back to that. Another way is make it expensive for them to switch to a competitor or to another company. Okay, so high switching costs. For example, if you have a cell phone, if you have a smartphone, which is Apple, oftentimes you will continue to use Apple iOS phones. Why? You might say, oh, I have all of this software, all of these apps, which I've already bought, or all of my addresses, all of my pictures are directly there. If I buy another iPhone, then I won't have to worry about whether I will lose this or whether I have to reset all of my programs. But if I switch to another brand, to an Android, in that case, I may have to do a lot of work to set up my new phone. So they have high switching costs, which helps the company retain their customers as well. So one way is making it difficult to switch, but an even better way to keep your customers is make sure that they're happy with your product. So the customer relationship management, or the customer relations block, can also be thought of as a two-sided funnel. So you have two funnels, one part getting narrower and then continuing straight and then expanding on the other side. So the first part of this funnel is about how do you get your customers? Okay, so here we have potential customers which find out about our products. And then this funnel, which is getting narrower, is indicative that not everyone that finds out about your product will necessarily become a customer, a paying customer. So you will lose a certain portion of the customers at each of these stages. We'll take a closer look what they are in just a little while. But let's assume that you are able to capture, turn into customers, convert a portion of the potential customers. So now that you have gotten them, what do you do with them? Well, the next thing you need to worry about is how do I keep my customers, or how long do they stay with me? So keeping the customers is very important, because the longer your customer stays with you, typically the more money you make from those customers. And finally, the funnel, which is getting bigger, is about the grow part of the relationship. So how can I make more money from my existing customers? So the get, keep, and grow relationship is representing the customer relations part of the business model. So the first part, how you get customers, determines your CAC, or your CAC, customer acquisition cost. In Turkish, müşteri elde etme maliyeti. So your customer acquisition cost is how much on average does it cost for me to get one additional customer, okay? And this is important because you need to compare it to what is called the LTV, or the lifetime value. In Turkish, müşteri ömür boyu değeri. So only if the CAC is less than the LTV can this be a profitable model. And depending on the product, for example, for SaaS products, software as a service, typically we want this to at least be 2 to at least 3 times the CAC, because you still have a number of other costs that need to be taken into account other than just getting the new customers. So a healthy model is one where the LTV, the amount of money that that customer is going to bring to your company, is significantly higher than the acquisition cost, or how much it costs you to get that new customer. So Steve Blank, in his course and in his book, says that, with a little differences. For example, this one is for physical products, the double-sided funnel. And again, the arrows flowing in is about, the advertising or the public relations that you are doing. So introducing your product to potential customers. And what you're trying to build is build awareness. Obviously, only a certain percentage of your target audience actually becomes aware of your product. Even if you advertise on television in Turkey on a national channel, that doesn't mean that automatically all 85 million are going to become aware of your product. So maybe 10% of that might become aware of that. And then of those that find out about your product, some of them will not be interested in what you're trying to sell to them, what you're trying to provide to them. So the second group is some of them will become interested in your product. They'll say, okay, can I get more information about this? Where can I find more information? And then they will start thinking, should I buy this? Will it satisfy my needs? Will it solve my problems? So consideration. And finally, only a certain percentage of those will actually make the purchase. So that's why the funnel gets narrower. You may show your advertising, or be careful here, it says paid media, which is typically advertising, or earned media. For example, it could be sending people door to door. It could be going and giving a speech somewhere. It could be going on television to talk about your product. So, that would be earned media or public relations. So whatever, they have a cost, at least in your time, in your energy, in all of the work that you do, sometimes the money that you pay. So the more people, you bring into this funnel, hopefully, if you also optimize to kind of reduce the amount that you lose in this funnel, you can end up with as many customers as possible. And then keeping your customers. What's the secret to this? The biggest factor is, are your customers happy? Are they satisfied? A happy customer tends to buy from you again and again and again. So you retain that customer, you keep that customer. Okay. And again, there are also some other tricks. For example, yes, they're happy, but you also make it expensive to switch. Okay. So that would allow you to keep those customers probably for an even longer period of time. But again, the part that you keep them, how long do they stay with you? And also, can I increase the actual amount of money or profit that I make from these customers? Unbundling is, for example, rather than selling something as a package, sometimes splitting it up into parts and then unbundling and selling them separately might allow you to make more money, or it might allow you to get some customers which don't want everything, but just want a part or some of the characteristics of what you're trying to sell. So unbundling can be profitable. And then we have this upsell and cross-sell and referrals. Let me switch to the next slide where we look at digital products, customer relationships in digital products. Again, it's the get, keep, and grow model. And again, over here, we have advertising, earned, and paid media. But here they've kind of made it into two steps rather than kind of awareness, interest, consideration, and purchase. For digital products, they use just acquire. So get people to download or use your digital product, and then activate, because a lot of the people that you get might be using the free version, or they might be using the limited version, and they might not become paying customers, so they don't activate, or they download it, they might even install it, but they never use it. So in that case, they haven't been activated. So customers or potential customers become real customers after they have been acquired and activated. And then notice here, there's this arrow, this shortcut, a viral loop. This is what happens when a customer that starts using your product falls in love with the product and then immediately goes around telling their friends, oh, this is a great product, you should try it as well. So this becomes a viral loop feeding back into this. And if you have a very good product that has the potential to go viral, the growth can be exponential. They're very quick. And then the part where you keep your customers, here's some examples of things that you can do to keep your customers. So you may keep in touch with them through blogs, through email campaigns, and so on. Or you might have organize events. For example, some car companies, Saturn, used to organize picnics or events where their own car owners would get together and organize this weekend where they would all come together and have fun. And it basically built a lot of camaraderie. And these customers tended to stay with the company for long periods of time. Or you might have loyalty programs where the longer you stay with the company, the more you get, or maybe you get discounts and so on. Outreach programs to make sure that they're able to contact with you. Or today, a lot of software, a lot of digital products comes with free updates, right? In the past, when you bought a computer, you would buy the software, and after a while, you would have to buy the new version of the software. They would not give you the updates for free. It was a way to get you to buy from them, to get money from you again after a certain amount of time. But today, when I buy some software or when I buy an app, when I pay for it, I typically expect that they will continually be sending me updates of this. So that might also be a way so that to keep the customers happy and to keep them continuing to use your products. Actually, this says digital products, but some cars have begun to be like this as well, right? If you think of the Tesla cars, vehicles, sometimes you wake up in the morning and new software has been downloaded, which increases the range or the horsepower of your vehicle, or it's become self-driving, autonomous. So these can all be ways to keep your customers for longer periods of time so you can make more money out of them. So now let's take a look at upsell, next sell, cross-sell. What are these? Well, upsell is when they get you into the store. You're about to buy something, but rather than buy the base model, the simple model that they've been advertising, they say, oh, that car you were thinking of buying, or that phone you were thinking of buying that we advertised, oh, that's very basic. You probably want more memory, you want more power, you want a CD player, you want this, you want that. So they tend to sell you something which is more expensive over time. Next sell is not only worrying about selling you the product today, but tomorrow, or when you're going to buy something again, if you're happy, you may buy from that brand or that company again. This is very common in phones, smartphones. It's very common in vehicles. If you're happy with the product, your next purchase of a vehicle or a phone may be from the same brand as well. Cross-sell is when the company sells you something kind of related, but indirectly related to your product. Typical examples of this is you buy a car, and together with the car, you also get insurance, okay? Or with very common with phones. When you go to buy a phone, they always ask you, do you want the extended warranty? Or with a lot of technology, computers and other things, they always try to sell you the extended warranty. Why is that? Because the profit margin on insurance and extended warranties typically is much higher than the actual product itself. So it makes huge sense for companies when they've already captured you as a customer to find a way to sell you something extra together with that product, especially if it brings high profits, like the extended warranties. So cross-selling can be beneficial. And finally, referrals. And notice here we have the second of the viral loops. When you have found a customer which likes your products, then if you play your cards wisely, that customer may help you find other similar customers which are similar to them and would also be happy to be using or buying your products. So if you can get them to point out these other potential customers, again, they can make a lot of money from this. And sometimes they're basically using you like free salespeople. A lot of games do this, right? You're playing a game, and sometimes they say, oh, do you want this in-app purchase? Oh, but you don't want to pay for it? Well, why don't you send this advertisement or this video to 10 of your friends? Or you're a Dropbox user. Do you want some extra memory? Of course. Why don't you invite new people? And if they join, I'll give you 500 extra megabytes. And also the person you've invited, I'll give them for free 500 extra megabytes as well. Or, to join PayPal, if you invite somebody new, they were giving you directly money to spend. So all of these are trying to get you, provide an incentive to you to invite people that you think will be good customers for the product, for the company. So referrals can be hugely beneficial. Rainbow uses this very smartly. So Rainbow, the seller of carpet cleaners, right? Vacuum cleaners. So typically they want to come to your house at a particular time of the day when the sunlight is hitting it, and show you with your own vacuum cleaner how not clean the environment becomes when you use it. And then they use their own product, which is very expensive, but it really cleans the carpet very well and doesn't send a lot of dust up into the air. So then they look at you and say, oh, is this what you want your family to be living in? And they have a very high sales rate if they can get inside the house. So they always ask for referrals. Similarly, insurance salesmen or individual retirement accounts, bireysel emeklilik satıcıları. So these also always ask for referrals. Could you suggest who else I might talk with? And they'll say, oh, Adil sent us to you. And so that allows them to typically get the foot in the door to explain their product and potentially get a new customer. That's how they had gotten me originally. So these are all ways where the customer relationships can help the business, make money from its customers. How does it capture them? How does it get the customers? How does it keep them? And how does it grow them? So yes, get, elde tutma, keep, elde etme, elde tutma, and grow, büyütme. So how does this take place? So again, a little terminology. Customer acquisition cost, we mentioned it, the CAC. So this determines whether the business model is profitable, especially when you compare it to the lifetime value. Uh, I don't think I mentioned it, but in order to calculate this, we need something called the churn, or devinim in Turkish. This is what portion of your customers you lose each period. The period may change. For example, for vehicles, it might be from one car to the next car that you buy. What percentage buys another brand? Or for phones, again, it might be from one phone to the next phone that you buy. But for example, Netflix or other subscription services is what percentage of my customers stay one more month, okay? For some games on your smartphone, this might be how many people do I lose each day? Okay, what percentage of my customers that were playing in day one do I lose in day two, in day three, and so on? So this period can be quite different depending on what it is you are selling. And the CAC, customer acquisition cost, actually can be calculated in this way. How much are you spending on your sales and marketing expenditures? And how many new customers does this bring to you? Sometimes you calculate this for a particular advertisement, or you go onto Facebook, or you go onto Google AdWords, and you spend, let's say, $10,000. And for $10,000, let's say that Google shows your advertisement to 1 million people. Wow, 1 million people. So $10,000 divided by 1 million. Wow, that sounds real cheap, because a lot of people saw my advertising and it cost me only $10,000. But did the 1 million people that saw your advertisements, how many of them became your customers? How many of them were interested? How many of them watched the advertisement? How many of them clicked on the link? How many of them read through the description? How many of them downloaded the app? How many of them, after download, installed the app? And how many of them, after installing the app, actually used it? And then 2 weeks later, when the free trial period ends, how many of them became paying customers? Okay, so the actual number you're interested in is not how many people saw the ad. It's, I paid $10,000. How many new customers did I get? And out of those 1 million people that saw the ad, what if I only got 1,000 new customers? So $10,000 divided by 1,000 new customers means that my customer acquisition cost for this advertisement was $10 per new customer. Is this good or is this bad? The answer is, it depends. What are you selling? And what is the profit margin of what you're trying to sell? For example, if you're trying to sell a smartphone game, which costs 99 kurush to purchase, wow, $10 is way too high. You know, this is not going to be profitable. This is not a good idea. But if you're selling, let's say, iPhones, or if even better, you're selling, let's say, BMW cars, and it costs you $10 to get one new customer, wow, you know, the amount of profit I make by just selling one smartphone or one BMW car is much, 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 much higher than the $10 I paid to acquire that new customer. So it depends on what it is that you're trying to sell. The average, how do you calculate the LTV, right? We said you compare the CAC with the LTV. How do you calculate LTV? Well, first, how much money, how much revenue do you get per customer? This is typically for software as a services, because the actual cost, marginal cost of providing software is approximately zero. So if the revenue that you earn is typically almost equal to the profit you get from this. So what is the average monthly revenue per customer? What is your monthly churn rate? Okay, what percentage of your customers do you lose each month? Let's say that you lose 20% of your customers each month. So the churn rate is 20%. What does this mean? Well, 1 over 20%, 1 over 0.20, 5. 5 is how, on average, how long does a new customer stay with your company? Okay, so if a new customer is expected to stay with you for 5 months, and if they pay you 10 lira per month, then the lifetime value of that new customer would be 10 lira per month divided by 0.20. So it would be 50 lira. Okay, so 10 multiplied by 1 over 0.25. So you get 50 lira. In other cases, if it's not some software, something like that, then you might want to, excuse me, you might want to use, rather than the monthly revenue per customer, the average monthly recurring revenue per account multiplied by the gross margin. So taking out the cost of providing that good or that service. The gross margin is how much profit am I making from this sale? So you're taking out the cost of providing that good. So this is the monthly gross profit that you're making from one customer. And again, dividing that by the monthly churn rate gives you the lifetime value of the customer. And again, you want the LTV to be much higher than the CAC in order for this to be a good business idea, a good business model. So if we go back to the examples we've been talking about, remember we had Lego, we had Nespresso, we had Amazon, we had Netflix, we had Gillette. So why are these interesting? Why are these innovative? Let's take a look at them a little more closely. First of all, in the 1900s and before, a lot of people didn't shave. So they would walk around with big, thick beards. But around the 1900s, it became kind of popular to have a nice, clean shaven look. And if you wanted to shave at that time, you had to use things that looked like this. These are straight razors, okay? And they were difficult to use. They were kind of dangerous. I know you could cut yourself easily, and they needed sharpening frequently because the sharpness of these blades would, after shaving once or twice, you'd have to resharpen them, either have somebody do it or you had to have your own kind of leather belt or something to help you sharpen these things. And that also wasn't very easy. So this was the existing technology of the time. It wasn't easy to look good. And then this guy appeared called King Gillette, King Camp Gillette, full name. And he wanted to find a good business idea. And he had quite a few ideas about how he might be able to make money from this, shaving business. And he also had this idea that, a good invention, a successful invention, would be one that allows the business to make money again and again from the same customers. Okay, so this idea had been introduced to him by some business associates. So he was trying to find a business idea which would help him make money from this shaving business again and again and again from satisfied customers. So he came up with the idea of how can I construct a new razor which would make it easy to shave and reduce the risk that they're going to cut themselves. But at the same time, rather than sell them to them once and never make money from them again, could there be a way that I sell to them on a regular basis, something which helps me make money again and again from these customers? So he wanted to develop very thin razors which could be replaced and that had sharp edges and that could be used for a while and then thrown away, replaced with new ones. So buying the razor blades again and again would allow you to shave in a safe manner and also without worrying about, hurting yourself. So this is the patent that he got in 1904 for what's called a safety razor. So inside this, you put these razors that have these sharp edges. The big problem with developing this was, how do I get the steel to be thin enough and strong enough, but at the same time to be sharp enough? And more importantly, the sharpness doesn't wear away very quickly. And finally, if I remember correctly, he found a way to cover the edges with a different metal, which would allow the sharpness to be longer lasting. And then this kind of blade handle was what he patented. So this thing that you could put the new blades, razor blades into. And obviously, as a lot of you know, in Turkish, these razor blades are called jilet, which is actually the name, the last name of this individual who formed the company. And we know of the gilets as, everything that is sharp metal. So he obtained the patent in 1904, but the thing that really helped him capture the big market was during the World War, the US Army purchased his shaving kits and gave one to each of their personnel. So all of them would use this daily and they got used to using it. So after the war, almost all of them continued to be customers of his products. And they would buy again and again because each of these blades might be usable for, 3 to 5 times. And then they become dull. So you need to replace it in order to have a nice, comfortable shave. But each of them are relatively cheap. So these are the kits that he sold to the army. So the blades were inside this because they were made of steel. Obviously, they could rust. So you need to keep them away from water when they were not being used. And then you would put them into these. You had this little mirror. And here, this is polished metal because, mirrors could break when you were away at war. So each soldier had one of these. And their creativity didn't stop there. They had a lot of competitors which learned to copy them over time. But Gillette also found ways to continue to innovate to keep their customers. So in the 1900s, they developed this and then, more developed versions of them, and then ways to actually adjust how close a shave this was giving. And then they added, a second blade in, I think it was 1972, and then a third blade in 1985. Well, no, actually, no, sorry, 1972. A second blade. In 1977, they added the moving head. In 1985, they added the lubricating strip. In 1998, they added the third blade with the Mach 3. And then they went with 5 blades and then vibration. And actually now the last thing I saw on their website was they have heated blades. They have, all sorts of interesting things. But the way they make money, they initially sell you, the handle, which is a nice handle, but they make money by selling you again and again the head, the cartridges, which is where the blades are found. And because after a certain while, the blades, wear out, they become dull, they need to be replaced. And that's how they make a lot of money, by selling you blades again and again. But they need to make you think that, oh, I need this very well-developed Gillette shaver, because if I shave with it, my skin is going to be very soft. I'm going to be very attractive. So they also need to spend a lot on advertising to make us believe about these things. Obviously, there have also been competitors arise over time. A lot of them have also become quite successful, but the shaving business model is an interesting one. They sell you basically the handle, and because to use that handle, you need to continue to buy the cartridges, which only work with this handle. Okay, you can't use a competitor's cartridges with this handle. So that's one of the ways they have high switching costs, and they keep you as a customer. And as long as you're happy with the shave that you're getting, you continue to buy. By the way, I've recently actually bought a safety razor. It doesn't look quite like this, but for the last couple of years, I've actually gone back to using the safety razors. I even bought a straight razor, which uses some of the safety razors, but I haven't. It feels dangerous, so I haven't used that as much as the others. What else do we have? Well, Lego. What does Lego do with customer relations? They used to sell identical products to everyone, and they actually were obtained the patents. And initially, they used to make wooden toys, by the way. So this company initially made toys, but they were wooden toys. And in 1958, they got the patent for these Lego blocks. And it was some of the best toys of my youth. I loved my Legos. And they were very high quality. They had lasted very long. And in 1999, Lego was actually chosen as the toy of the century. But in 2004, Lego almost went bankrupt. It was on the verge of bankruptcy. And the way that it managed to survive was by innovating. They no longer, the big problem that they had was once they sold a kid a set of Lego bricks, those lasted so long that they didn't have to buy anything again. You could use the same set for years and years. You could give it to your children. And the patent ran out, so other companies were able to produce very similar bricks at much cheaper prices, typically not as high quality, but for kids that are only going to use it for a couple of years, oftentimes it was more than enough. So they got into trouble. They lost their profitability. What was it that saved them? Well, part of it was co-creation. They got people to design sets of Legos for themselves, like how to build a tower, how to build a building. I need these parts, and you could go onto their website and place an order for this many of this many of this, and you could upload how to build it, what it's going to look like. And not only could you order this for yourself, but you could also put it up there for other people to purchase as well. And through this co-creation model, you could make money as the designer from sets that had been sold of your product as well. Lego made money, and you also made money. But the real big thing which saved them was they started co-creating, but they also had tie-ins with popular movies or series especially. And what this allowed was that not only did you buy from Lego once, but people that liked these sets, for example, if you bought a set of the Minions movie, then when a new movie comes out, that set typically was only used to make that one figure. Or if you bought the Lego Star Wars set to make the Millennium Falcon, you made it, you put it on your shelf, and it stayed there. You didn't take it apart and use it to make other things. So this allowed them to sell to those customers again, each new year, each birthday, each Bayram. They could get their customers to buy a new set for their children. So that allowed them to continue to be able to make money from their existing happy customers. So that was a different approach. to grow your customers, to be able to sell to them again and again. Another interesting example is Nestle developed the Nespresso machine. So the one on the left is the Nespresso. This one is the slightly cheaper and slightly lower quality Cibo Cafissimo, but they're pretty similar in how they do business. They basically initially were making just espresso, but later on, cafe creme and other things they also began to produce. But the thing that made them a lot of money was that their competitors were very expensive espresso machines that had, were expensive to use, were difficult to clean, and needed professional knowledge to be able to utilize. But not everyone was using this. So a lot of people were using instant coffee, and instant coffee was, very cheap. So when Nespresso came out with this, the advantages were that they were sold together with these pods. So this is a Cibo version of it. So they put the coffee inside this, which kept the coffee fresh for a longer amount of time. But more importantly, by putting it into these pods, I didn't have to measure. I don't have to prepare the coffee ahead of time. I just put it into the machine and I press a button. And even nicer, I don't have to clean the machine in detail after using it, which is another problem that the expensive espresso machines can have. So this allowed many more people to enjoy espressos at a cheaper price. And initially, actually, Nestle tried to sell these to businesses, but it wasn't successful in doing that. Eventually, they said, oh, we're going to change it around. And they decided to market it to individuals, to households. And to be able to do this, they hired George Clooney, and they came up with an image of very refined taste and so on, and very high quality. And that's what they began to sell. And the interesting thing is they sell the espresso, the Nespresso machine, in their own stores and in a lot of other places. And the machine itself, they don't make much money from selling it. They may actually be losing money on the machine. But the thing that they make money from is by selling these coffee pods. And because only their own coffee pods can be used in their own machines, once they capture you, you continue to be a customer of theirs for a long period of time. And thanks to this, some statistics tell us that the average, initially it was for Switzerland, the average Swiss coffee drinker was spending about 10 cents per day on coffee before the introduction of Nespresso. And in a few years, Nestle was able to increase this to about 80 cents. So a multiple of 8, the amount of revenue generated per customer increased thanks to this machine. And again, a lot of that, the way they're able to make money from you again and again and again, you can't use just any coffee. You can't use their competitors' pods and so on. So you have to buy from them again, and they make money from you. And secondly, the pods can only be bought from Nespresso stores or from the Nespresso website, which means that they're cutting out the middlemen and they're keeping a much larger percentage of the profits from the sale of these pods. So that's how Nespresso customer relationships keeps the customers and keeps making money from them again and again and again. Similar to this are printers, right? Especially the inkjet printers, which were sold at such cheap prices. But once you ran out of ink, replacing the ink cartridges cost maybe 2 or 3 times what you paid for the printer itself. So they were hoping to make money from you by buying their printers. You would end up having to use their printer cartridges, which is where they make much more money from you, as long as they can get you to buy their ink cartridges and not refilling the old cartridges. Another company which does a very good job, which we've actually talked about with regard to the channels as well. Remember, Amazon became successful by changing where we buy books. Rather than in physical stores, now many people around the world buy books and many other things online. So Amazon has become one of the world's most valuable companies thanks to this. And Jeff Bezos has went from looking like this to looking like this. And their logo has also developed over time as well. So how does Jeff Bezos and Amazon use customer relations to make their business profitable, in addition to changing the channel? Well, they have a lot of data. They know a lot about books, what books are out there, about their prices, and they also know about what type of people like which books. And by also having data about what you've bought in the past and what books you like, what books you don't like, they're able to make a lot of suggestions to you about what you might want to buy. So they're able to grow you as a customer to buy more and more books by making good suggestions to you. They also want to keep you happy. So they also show you that, oh, maybe rather than this book, you might want to buy this other book, which might be cheaper or more in line with you. They don't want to make money from you just once. They want to keep you happy and make money, maybe smaller amount, but again and again and again, which ends up being much, much more money. And finally, they also have something called Amazon Prime. You pay them, it used to be $99. I think now it's $129 or $149. You pay it each year. And this basically means that you don't pay for shipping. So when you buy something, you don't pay for shipping. And I think it's even overnight shipping that this pays for. Amazon actually loses money on the shipping. So when you pay $129 for something like this, you probably, buy so many things that it would have cost you $200 or $300 or $500 for the shipping of all of those things. So why does Amazon do this? Well, once you get Amazon Prime, you buy everything from Amazon. You don't go to the competitors because there you might have to pay for shipping. If you already have shipping or free overnight shipping from Amazon, why would you go anywhere else? Especially when you know that their prices are probably not as good as Amazon's prices as well. So that's some of the ways that Amazon uses customer relationships and data and different kind of innovations to make money from its customers and keep them happy, keep them buying again and again and again. And finally, Netflix. Well, initially, the market for movies and movie rental services was dominated by Blockbuster. And you would go into the Blockbuster stores and they had VHS cassettes mostly, and you could go and rent the movies that you wanted. And if you had to bring it back in, I think, something like 5 days, and if you brought it back late, there were late payments, and you couldn't always find all the movies that you wanted and so on. So it was, not the best service for everyone. Initially, Netflix, its initial name was actually Kibble, said, well, we want to do things a little differently. We don't want to have late fees, and we don't want to do this in physical stores. So they said, what if rather than VHS cassettes, what if, first of all, let's switch to DVDs, which are smaller and lighter. And second, rather than stores, let's mail these to the houses of people that want them. And once they watch it, they can mail it back to us. Okay. So they switched the model. Initially, it was receiving the DVDs. You went onto their websites. This was begun in 97. And initially, in 1998, they began a DVD rental company they had 900 titles. And you would go online to their websites, you would place an order, and you would pay $6 per movie that you ordered. You would receive it through the mail, you would watch it, and then you would return it in the envelope that was provided to you at no additional cost. And if you sent it back late, there were no late fees, but you couldn't order anymore. A while later, they converted it to a subscription service. You could pay a monthly $15.95. And as long as you continue to pay that, you could have up to 4 movies at a time. And as you watch them, you would send them back and you could get new movies continuously. So you could watch quite a few movies thanks to this, as long as you sent back, and you at any time you had no more than 4 movies on you. As you sent them back, you could order new ones. So this model began to be pretty successful. And let's see, they had an initial public offering, an IPO in 2002. At the time, they had about 600,000 subscribers. And they actually were able to raise quite a bit of money. They paid back some of their loans and so on. But the thing that really skyrocketed them was when, thanks to this money, they also offered free trial memberships and stuff like this. When you went to IMDb, the internet movie database, you could get free six-week trial memberships and stuff like this. But once, rather than sending the DVDs through the mail, the internet and the bandwidth started to increase and expand. So eventually they switched to a system that you could watch the movies online or download them to your computer and then watch them in your own house. So in 2007, Netflix launched its streaming service. And initially they had 1,000 titles in their database. And initially it was called Watch Now. And once this began, wow, things really started to take off, especially as computer usage and internet connections became faster and faster. It became a hassle to wait for the DVD to arrive. Some people actually still use the mail-in version of Netflix. The numbers say something like more than almost 3 million people actually use the mail-in version still, maybe places where they don't have good connections. But in the world, about the Statista says 37% of the world's internet users use Netflix. Wow, that's a huge number. It was, close to 200 million, and that's data from, a few years back. So a lot of customers, and Netflix also has become a very valuable company, even though recently it has had some problems. So that brings to an end my introduction my talk about, that brings to an end my review of the customer relationships part of the business model canvas. I hope it's given you some ideas about how it can be incorporated into your business idea, and also some ideas about, how you might want to test some of the customer relationships part that you have in your existing idea. So I look forward to listening to what you find related to customer relationships next week in class. I'll be seeing you. Goodbye.